Hello, and welcome to another PWN Design Studio tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how we can break down certain feature types in Global Mapper for export as masks inside of Gaia, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, or whatever 3D program you are using. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Inside of Global Mapper, you'll see here that I have some road data pulled up, and it's black and white set for mask usage, and you can export this to implement roads and whatnot into your landscape, and I'm going to show you how to break that down. First things first, you need to go back and watch the digital elevation video tutorial I have for Global Mapper, where we download DEM files and import them in the Global Mapper. You need to have a file format or a file type in there that holds the metadata for your location that you downloaded from, or else this will not work properly. If you know the latitude and longitude of that location, then you can input that manually inside a Global Mapper, but it's a lot easier if you just have the right file format loaded. So any old height map isn't going to work for this. You need to make sure that you have that geolocation. I'm going to delete all of this so we can start from scratch real quick. I've recorded this video maybe 6 or 7 times now, and each time it's come out to be about 23 minutes. I want to see if I can get it to 10. Alright, so I already made the video for the height map. This is the height map that we're using, so go back and watch that. I'm not going to be breaking down that process here, because that'll take too long. I'm going to go ahead and show you what we need to do to download the specific information that we need. So click on the online data icon, which is the global icon here. And what I used for this process was OpenStreetMaps, but specifically the vector map download. You want to download the current screen bounds, or within certain mileage or kilometers of your latitude and longitude of your area, or just the entire data source bounds will work just as fine. I'm going to do within 5 kilometers of that area, or actually, you know what, I'm going to do the entire data source bounds, because last time this gave me an issue for some reason. So I'm just going to do the entire data source bounds. And we're going to call that good. I'm going to go ahead and hit connect, and that will open up OpenStreetMap for us. And as you can see here, because I had the proper format file for our height map, it loaded up the area that I live in. I already have the map data downloaded, so I'm not going to do that again, but I will show you what you want to use when you're following this process. I downloaded the Overpass API information, so click on that and it will pop up with a dialog. It might take about 15 to 30 seconds. For some reason it took a while for me for it to pop up, but it will take a little bit of time to pop up, and then you can just save it out as its default file format. I'll just show you real quick so you don't really get confused here. I just don't want it to take too much time. So there it is right there. I just hit save as, and then I save it wherever I want to put it and call it good. Alright, so we have our map data downloaded, so we have to load it. In order to load it, we go back to Global Mapper, go to File, Open Data Files, and then just load up the map file. And I'm going to use map 3 here, which is the one that I want to use. And Global Mapper will auto-load that file up as what I need it as. But if you get a dialog box asking you what type of file you want to load it up as, choose OpenStreetMap, and in parentheses it'll say OSM. That's the one that I used, and it gave me this. So if for some reason it doesn't auto-load it, doesn't read it properly, just go through all the little options that it gives you and just try to find OpenStreetMap and then use that. It should be an option in that long list of file types. Alright, so we have our data loaded, and now we need to separate all these features out so we can be selective on what we want to export. Sorry, I got allergies coming back. Alright, so we have rivers, we have roads, we have intermittent roads, we have streams, so on and so forth. We even have ponds, lakes. There's a lake right here, there's a lake right here, and there's a reservoir right here. A whole bunch of information that we can use for masking out certain features, but if you try to select them, as it is now, it's going to be a really big hassle because there's just a lot of stuff going on. So we need to separate all these features out into their own individual feature types. In order to do that, we're just going to select our loaded data. You can see here we have 124,133 features. That's a lot that we don't really need to worry about, but that's a lot that we can separate out. So right click on your map data, go to layer, and go to split. And now this split is going to be based on feature type. Go ahead and hit OK. And that will go ahead and split everything into their own respective categories. Right here. Super simple. So now we can deselect all of this and we can be selective in what we want. So if you have like a river in your area that you want, you can select that. I don't have many rivers in my area because I live in a desert, but I do have residential roads, as you can see here. We also have like an interstate that goes this way. This is I-80. We do have a U.S. highway right here. This is SR-36. And we have a couple other areas here. We have the lakes, and we actually have more roads. Let's see, the state highway right there. So if I wanted to export all of this information, I could do that. I actually just want to export the roads and not these lakes. You can also export croplands if you have any cropland areas, and you can use that as a mask to implement crop plots into your map if you wanted. But for now, I'm just going to stick around with these roads, and as you can see here, we have a lot of roads. I'm actually going to deselect the interstate and the highways and the state highway and just stick with the residential roads. And we're going to export this. So after you found what you wanted to export, you can create their own group. So you can select them using the checkbox and then make sure that they're highlighted in your list by using Control, and you can click on multiple features. In my case, I'm only using one, but you can select multiple. And once you have all the ones that you want selected, right click on any of the highlighted ones and go to Group, or click on Group, and then name it something. In this case, I'm just going to call it Resi Roads. Hit OK. And now I have a group specifically for what I want to export. That's rather important because we don't want to have to go through really long lists trying to find what we want. We just want to put them in their own little groups. All right, so now we're ready to export, almost, actually. We want to make sure that our background is black. And so if you're working with the default white background or yellow background, you just want to make sure that your background's black. And to do that, you go to View, Background Color, and just change it to black. Hit OK, and it should change to black. Now if we remove our height data, we have our roads here, and you can see they're not completely white. They're like this grayish color. We don't want it to be gray, we want it to be white, so we have a full black and white mask that we can work with. To select features and all of their features without having to click and drag, you can be selective about it if you wanted to, but to select everything, all you have to do is just right click the feature layer and go to select all featured or items in that layer, or whatever it was called. It was select all features and selected layers with digitizer tool. That's what it was. And all it does is it selects everything within that layer. After you have everything selected, right click on the palette anywhere, go to edit. Keep everything in here default. You don't really have to change much of anything, but give it a name. I'm going to call this Resi Roads. You have to, or else it won't work. And then we're going to specify a style. And in here we're going to use a solid style with a 1 pixel width. You can use a higher width if you wanted to here. And even if you know the width of your roads in meters, you could actually use meters here if you wanted to. But we just want to make sure that our lines that we are selecting are white. So let's go ahead and change the color to white. And all this is doing is it's just changing the way that Global Mapper is rendering these lines out. So if we didn't want to use a solid line, we could use dashed dots or striped or any of these other things that are available to us. But since these are roads, we do want them to be solid so that they're connected and look good. All right, other than that, we don't have to change anything else. We just want to make sure that we had the style set to solid and our color set to white. And now we can hit OK, hit OK again. And now we just use this button right here to deselect everything. And now we have a black and white mask and road selection. All right, now we need to export our roads, and there are two formats that you can use, and one of them I recommend for different workflows, but they both work. And they both work in Gaia. So to export the roads in just the area that we have selected, so within our height map here, and we don't want any of this information because we're not using it, we want to use just what's in our height map. When we go to export, we want to make sure that we do it by bounds. So let's go make sure that we have our roads, our roads selected, file, export, and you can export a raster image format or vector LiDAR format. I recommend the vector format when you're working in Illustrator or something similar, and using an SVG file. And the reason why is because a vector file is going to have like an almost infinite amount of scaling that you can use, so you can get really fine details in your masks. If you use an image format, you're kind of limited to the resolution of that file format, and that could make really blurry and pixely selections. And it doesn't really matter inside Gaia because Gaia is going to be able to read a PNG or an SVG file. However, it's not going to render an SVG file the same as something like Illustrator would. It's still going to be pixely. So I would just recommend sticking with PNG or something similar if you're using Gaia. But if you're going to use something outside of Gaia, use SVG. That way your roads don't become blocky and blurry and pixely. I'm just going to use an image format. I'm going to use PNG. And for the 8-bit palette image, that's what I'm going to select here. I don't need 24-bit because it's just a mask. I unselected everything here. We don't need any of that information. Now for the export bounds, you're going to use layer bounds right here. And you're going to use the SRTM worldwide elevation data. That is our height data right here that we had loaded. And what doing this is going to use the bounds of that height map so that we only select the roads for export that are inside of that bounds. And as you can see here, it makes a yellow line where that bounds is. I wish I can turn it on here and show you, but if I were to turn the elevation data, our height map essentially, on right here, that would be where it would line up at. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And we're just going to save it as this. That's the first time I ran it, so I'm just going to replace it, hit yes, and it exported. We're good to go. So that was our height map. You can see here it lined up with our bounds. And now we only exported the roads within that area. We don't have roads over here that we aren't going to use, giving us a larger file. All right, so we exported our roads. Now we can go into Gaia, and I already have it pre-set up. You can see here I used it to color in roads on my landscape. And again, like I said, you can do this for lakes, you can do it for ponds, you can do it for rivers, you can do it for railroads, power lines, all sorts of stuff to help you visualize where things need to go on your landscape. And there are a couple things you can do in Gaia. You can either have a physical manifestation of your roads, or you can just use it as a mask for coloring. And I set up both options here. So if you want to use it for a physical feature set on your landscape, you just use a combine node, and you just combine your landscape in with the file that you loaded for your roads. And then I used the file for the roads as the mask for the combine, and that just brought everything in nicely. I used a very small amount on the blend method. The ratio is set to 0.05, and as you can see here, the roads are in there. Just very minor amounts of displacement on my landscape. The roads are really flat. They don't need to be poking out really far. And also one more thing, if your roads are coming in a little bit more broad and wide than 1 pixel, use adaptive scaling on your file node for your roads, and that ought to clear it up. Now, if you don't want to use the roads as like a physical option for your landscape, You can just use it as a coloring method, which is what I did, and that's what I recommend. And it's the same thing for the mixer as the combine. All I did is I put in the sat map for my landscape, and then I used a quick color for the roads, and then I used the file for my roads as the mask for the mixer, and this is what we ended up with. So super easy. It helps you visualize what you're doing, and I highly recommend using this workflow for all sorts of things when it comes to trying to visualize what you want to put into your landscape. I also recommend putting in a little more time into your landscape, making it look better than what I did, but the purpose of this wasn't to visualize the landscape, it was the roads. So in any case, it turned out rather okay, and I'm going to be using this method for all sorts of things going forward. So if you guys have any questions, or if you might have missed something or have any concerns on with this method, please let me know, and I'll do my best to kind of explain things if I can. If I can't, I'll make sure I help you find the answer. The Discord is growing. We had new people join even just today, yesterday and today. We get somebody almost every day, so that's pretty good. I do like seeing a nice growing community. I'd started a theme challenge, so if you are part of the Discord community, I recommend reading up on the new challenge theme here. It's going to be nature in space. So as an example, a long time ago for Eon Software, they had a challenge kind of similar where I put a tree inside of a bubble, and I had the roots all sprawling downward into the bubble, and it was floating out in space with a nebula in the background, and it looked really cool, and I ended up winning that theme challenge. So I do recommend reading up on the rules here and the theme, which is right here. We have 30 days to create what you want. I'm going to be a judge, so I can't participate, but 30 days to create some really cool renders. You can just upload them here inside of the Theme Challenge 01 chat. You are limited to 2, so after your first 2 uploads, anything that comes in after that will be ignored. So if you upload 4 images and your 4th one was better than your 2nd one, I apologize, but you are max 2 uploads, so make them count, because I will only count the first 2 uploads. So with that said, go ahead and join the Discord community. We are talking almost every day on it about really cool things. Just the other day, Michael Garston uploaded some really cool images in the, I believe it was the showcase chat, where he shared pictures of a tour that he went on for some good inspiration, and people are talking about how they're making things inside of the showcase, and we've had some really cool uploads, as you can see. So the community is growing. I love it. Everybody in there is really awesome. I do recommend joining it if you haven't already. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.